Today we'll be showing you how to make a really simple template to help you make sure that your block is lined up squarely on the paper and that it's centered. So what you need to do is have a scrap piece of paper that's the same size as the paper that you plan to print on, or it could be a little bit larger, but the easiest way is just to make sure that the template paper is the same size as the paper you plan to print on eventually. And then what you'll be doing is taking the block that you plan to print on the paper and centering it. So the goal is to have even margins on the right and the left side, and you could have even margins on the top and the bottom, or if you want to leave a little bit extra space at the bottom for a signature, that is fine too. But do your best to really get the image in the center of the paper. If the measuring part seems confusing to you, you can also create a piece of paper template that's the same size as your block and mark the center points on there. That may make it a little bit easier to line it up with the center of the paper itself. So this paper is sort of odd size. This is the washi paper that we'll be printing some of our relief blocks on. It's 9.5 by 13, which is kind of an odd proportion. So if that seems like too much math for you, another really simple way to find the midpoint is simply to fold your template in half carefully without wrinkling it too much, and then that gives us the midpoint as well. Then when we unfold it, we'll know exactly where the middle point is, and then it's a little bit easier to find the crease of the paper and line up your midpoints of this little paper template is very close to the size of my wood block, so I can trace this now. And you can trace it in pen, pencil. Just try to be fairly accurate and get that rectangle parallel to the edges of your template paper so that it's nice and centered. So that would give us a guideline. I'm going to draw it a little bit darker so that we can see it in the video a little bit easier. So I'll actually go around the block itself. This block is not quite 6 by 8, but it's pretty close. So I'm going to trace with this China marker so you can see it a little bit better. And again, you won't be drawing rectangles on the paper you'll actually be printing on. This is just a template that we'll be using to help us get the printing paper in the right spot. So to protect your template now so that you don't have to redraw this every time you accidentally get a fingerprint on it, you can mount it right to the back side of a protective piece of plastic. So this is a really cheap cutting board that I got at the Dollar Tree, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach it to the matte side. This has a little bit less of a like a non-glare surface. The other side is really shiny, and I would leave this shiny side up. So we're taping the template to the bottom side so that we have a really nice plastic, heavy-duty plastic to protect our template so that we don't have to make a lot of these. And I would just tape it right on there. So use a little bit of artist tape or clear, just like magic tape, and I would at least tape the 4 corners. You don't have to tape the whole thing all the way around, but just tape it securely enough that it lies flat and that it's protected by the plastic sheet once we turn it over. So I'll just do a little dab of tape to keep things moving here. And so then when we're actually ready to print, what we would do is we would, in a separate spot, ink up our block with some ink and a brayer, so we'd get it all inked up, and then we'd move it over to our template, and then we take our actual printing paper and we'll be lining it up. So let me get a clean sheet over here. So usually what I'll do is I try to give myself a large enough margin, if possible, that I can line up the paper on the edge without it touching the plate. So I pin down the edges with my finger, keeping this up, and then just pull it nice and straight so it doesn't droop down onto the block. And then once it's on the inked block, you can kind of gently hold it with your fingers while you get a wooden spoon here, while you burnish it and print it. Some of our blocks will be relief blocks. We won't carve wood necessarily, but we can be using craft foam or other things for this monotype class. And we'll also be using these plexiglass plates. Now these are a little bit bigger, so I'll talk you through how we'll make the adjustments there, but it's sort of the same system. So what we could do is we could create a separate template, or we could add another set of lines to this one that we already have. I'm just going to pull this one off and do a separate one, I think, so that it's not too confusing which lines we're following. The other thing you can do is you can draw directly on your protective plastic itself, and you can still reuse this. So on the matte side again, this is slightly less glossy. I think what I'll do is trace my monotype plate right on there. And again, you would take a little bit more time than I'm doing to make sure you're really centering it on the block. I'm just going to kind of estimate in the interest of time. So let's say this is perfectly centered on our block. Let me put a piece of paper under there so we can see it a little bit better. Let's see what's happening here. So let's say we've got it centered on our protective sheet, and then you could trace it with a permanent marker. You could also try, these China markers are sold at the hardware store. They're designed to write on glass and write on ceramics, and so I'm going to see if this works well enough. If not, we can use a permanent marker too. The nice thing about the China marker is it can rub off with a little bit of elbow grease, you know, just pressing pretty hard with a paper towel, or you can use a little bit of soap and wash it off. If you want something that's a little bit more durable, you can use a Sharpie marker, and then if you end up needing to redraw a different size plate on your protective film, you can just wash off the Sharpie marker with a little bit of either rubbing alcohol or acetone, like fingernail polish remover can take it off too, so that you can reuse these transparencies for other size plates. But this way we've got an image drawn right on the back side of the plate, and then again, I'll just put it on white paper so we can see it a little bit better. But that way, once we've inked up our plate, we know right where to put it, so that then when we put our printing paper on top of that, we would be able to center it on there. So another option then. We'll be moving on to talking about using these plates. So with these real thin plates, when you first get them, they have this protective layer of blue film on there. I want you to peel that off of both sides so that it's just a clear piece of plastic, and then we'll be inking up these plates and reusing them many times. So it's hard to see in the video, but there is a plate here. In the next video, I'll talk about how we can make the image area a little bit smaller so that we don't have to worry about getting our fingerprints on the edges of our inked plate. So that we'll cut off here.